It's Thursday, the 30th January 2025. Let's take a look at the headlines making waves in Nigeria today. First, the Punch newspaper. The leading story. PDP governors plan summit as leaders exchange blows at BOT meeting. You can get the complete story on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. And above the leading story. Injunctive orders against Obaibena, GHL, others stay. First Bank Council. We can get the complete story on page 10 of the Punch newspaper. Tariff hike. Labour plans telecom boycott. February 4 protest. You can get the complete story on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. And below the leading story from the right. Expulsion. NNPP woes Aribesola. APC disowns Oyetola's governor posters. You can get the complete story on page 28 of the Punch newspaper. Max Air. Federal government suspends airlines. Plans to audit others. You can get the complete story on page 21 of the Punch newspaper. JAMB suspends law admission in Kwasu. Redeemers Varsity, 6 others. You can get the complete story on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. Police kill 5 kidnappers, recover 5.2 million naira in Ogun. You can get the complete story on page 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. Gani Adams faults Sultan's backing for Sharia in Southwest. You can get the complete story on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. Moving over to the next paper, Daily Trust. PDP. Wabara insists on NEC meeting as violence marks BOT gathering. Ironwood's head forcefully rejects Ude Okoye. Damagun blames leaders for crisis. You can get all of this on page 4 of the newspaper. Moving over to the next paper, Nigeria Tribune. According to courts, injunctive orders against Obaibena, GHL, others stay. First Bank Council. You can get the complete story on page 4 of the Tribune. RMDC demands equity, collaboration and inclusivity for Remo in the creation of proposed Ijebu states. You can get the complete story on page 5 of the Tribune. And moving over to the next paper, Vanguard. The leading story. How federal government botched prosecution of 888 terror suspects, says Babadoko, DPPF. You can get the complete story on page 4 of the Vanguard. And above the leading story. Lenders experience high loan default rates in Q4 24. CBN survey. You can get the complete story on page 19 of the Vanguard. Anambra security outfit raids dreaded Lilo Forest. Kill 6 gunmen. You can get the complete story on page 10 of the Vanguard. NLC holds nationwide telecom tariff hike protest Tuesday. You can get the complete story on page 5 of the Vanguard. Former exit of Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso. ECOWAS pledges to keep door open. You can get the complete story on page 8 of the Vanguard. And below the leading story from the right. I will closely work with Pandev, Oba of Benin pledges. You can get the complete story on page 30 of the Vanguard. PDP National Secretary position. BOT sets up panel to meet claimants. You can get the complete story on page 9 of the Vanguard. Still below the leading story, directly under the picture, federal government secures $1.1 billion AFDB loan to power 5 million people by 2026, says Tinubu. You can get the complete story on page 5 of the Vanguard. Alleged electoral fraud. Court revokes bail. Issues arrest warrant on UNIO professor. You can get the complete story on page 6 of the Vanguard. Max Air suspends operation for 3 months. You can get the complete story on page 9 of the Vanguard. FIFA 2026 World Cup. Toro sure Super Eagles will qualify. You can get the complete story on page 37 of the Vanguard. Moving over to the next paper, Business Day. The leading story. Local investors drive stock deals to 18-year high. Domestic transactions make up 85% of transactions. Naira 4 boost market performance. You can get all of this story on page 31 of the newspaper. And beside the leading story from the left, Naira rare stability sparks renewed confidence among investors. You can get the complete story on page 31 of the newspaper. Higher agric budget insufficient to boost food production. You can get the complete story on page 31 of the newspaper. United Nigeria, ex-Jet set up local repair facilities to save FX. You can get the complete story on page 30 of the newspaper. From dreams to decay, how Nigeria squandered its industrial ambitions. You can get the complete story on page 30 of the newspaper. Moving over to the last paper on the list, The Guardian, the leading story. Neglected Tropical Disease Day. Spike in ailments pushes Nigerians' care funding gap to 8.6 trillion naira. You can get the complete story on page 6 of The Guardian. And above the leading story, injunctive orders against Obaibena, GHL, others stay, court rules. You can get the complete story on page 31 of The Guardian. And below the leading story, from the left, NSC to protest against 50% telecom hike on Tuesday. You can get the complete story on page 3 of The Guardian. Tinubu blurring line between state power, personal ambition, says Atiku. You can get the complete story on page 3 of The Guardian. Sultan backs Sharia law in Oyo, Ekiti. You can get the complete story on page 3 of The Guardian. Reps dismisses 400 million naira bribery allegations. Blame varsity heads. You can get the complete story on page 4 of The Guardian. 5 kidnappers killed in gun duel with police along Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. You can get the complete story on page 8 of The Guardian. NCAA suspends Max Air over Kano near crash incidents. You can get the complete story on page 29 of The Guardian. Security, economic concerns as ECOWAS confirms Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali's withdrawal. You can get the complete story on page 6 of The Guardians. And these are the headlines making waves in Nigeria today. If any of these headlines caught your attention, do get a copy of the paper to read the complete story.
Visit Housing TV Africa on YouTube and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to Housing TV Africa to stay updated on latest happenings in Nigeria's housing sector. Follow our social media pages, like and share our posts on Facebook, Housing TV Africa, on Twitter, Housing TV Africa, Instagram, Housing TV Africa. Join the conversation and keep up with latest housing updates.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing development broadcasting.